Hello, everyone. You all didn't have to stop talking because of me. We're going to start with Senator Watson, Senate Bill 814. If you want to come on up, and if you have a panel, they're certainly welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair Gazone, Vice Chair Rosapep, and colleagues on the Budget and Tax Committee. For the record, I'm Senator Ron Watson, representing the 23rd District of Prince George's County, and I'm here today to present Senate Bill 814. This is a really simple bill. It is not online poker, Chair. It will require county governments to make a report by July 1st each year to the Governor and General Assembly on the amount and use of county development impact fees, surcharges, and excise tax. Why is this important? I was called, I represent one of the biggest thoroughfares in Prince George's County, which is Route 301. And because Route 301 is a state road, I was asked to attend a public meeting, and they were talking about the congestion on 301 and turned to me and said, Senator Watson, it's a state road. When is the state going to widen the road? And I said to them, the state does not make any developmental decisions. Those decisions are made by the county, and the county's decisions are what impacted the road. Now think if throughout the state, all the state roads, that we were just supposed to just widen because of decisions made by local government. The intent of this legislation is transparency and good governance. The majority of counties statewide impose some form of a development impact fee, whether it's an impact fee, surcharge, or an excise tax. Most counties that impose this tax are unable to accurately disclose how much money is collected and where the fee goes, even fees that have been earmarked for specific intended purposes. Most counties are still experiencing overcrowding schools, crumbling roads, aging and failing infrastructure that can be fixed with these impact fees. It's important to understand that these fees are used to mitigate the impacts of new developments. Senate Bill 814 is common sense and would aid counties in better tracking these fees and understand where the money is going, which would benefit both the applicant and the jurisdiction. The Maryland Association of Counties has recommended two friendly amendments, which I plan to accept. These amendments would remove language in the bill that refers to impact fees in legislative, councilmatic, or commissioner districts because counties don't track impact fees in this manner. I also want to thank Vice Chair Rosapep for co-sponsoring this bill, and I urge the committee to give it a favorable report.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair. Lori Graff, I'm the CEO of the Maryland Building Industry Association, proudly to support Senate Bill 814. As the Senator said, the information is already available. This is about transparency. We have a really hard time in certain jurisdictions getting information about our impact fees, where they're going, how they're being used. So this bill just simplifies that. The information is already available, so we would like to see a favorable report on this. House Bill 698 is on third reader in the House with the amendments that the Senator mentioned. So we support those as well and hope to see a favorable report. Thank you.
Who did you say the report, who does the report?
The counties would do it.
So it's just each individual one. It's
Correct.
Not one single report.
No.
They just all need to be turned in.
Correct.
Gotcha. Questions for the witness or the senator? Sounds like a good one.
I finally got one.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Lord. Yeah.
Senator Jennings. Oh, he's not here. I don't see Bob.
He's across the street.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, distinguished members of the committee, Senator J.B. Jennings, here on House Bill or Senate Bill 822. This bill establishes a property tax credit for non-primary residents in Maryland, such as condos, beach vacations, or cabins out in Western Maryland. These properties are used as secondary residences, vacation homes. These are not tax credits for revenue-generating properties, such as rentals, investment properties, or any income-generating properties. To qualify, you must supply a written application and provide a deed for the non-primary resident. Now, you may question, why do I have this bill? Why are we doing this? I have a lot of friends, a lot of people I know who have places at the beach. And every time when I talk to them, hey, where's your place? Oh, we're up in Fenwick Island. We're in Rehoboth. We're in Bethany. Why? Oh, property taxes are better up there. I'm a proud owner at a beach house. Mine's on 7th Street in Ocean City, Maryland. And it drives me crazy that we're losing people to Delaware. And I think, hey, what can we do to get people back here? And this is one thing I've looked at. It said, hey, what can we do? And this is an idea. It's just a concept. Let's look at it. Let's discuss it. This bill, just like the homestead tax credit, unlike the homestead tax credit, which capped at 10%, this will cap it at 15%, which the actual percentage will be set up by the local municipalities and counties. Again, the idea is we have Marylanders that are going outside our state to buy their secondary homes. We know they're going to buy it, whether it's Delaware or some are going up into, if they want a place out in Western Maryland in the snow, some are going up into Pennsylvania now in the Poconos or up towards Pittsburgh area. The idea is to try to get them here back in Maryland. That's what this bill does. It's an idea. I know the locals don't like it because they think they're going to lose revenue, which they will lose some. But, it's not always about, revenue laws. It's about doing right for Marylanders, making sure that we keep them in this state and keeping them, Marylanders happy and wanting to love their state and stay here. So with that, I ask for your consideration, or at least thought of it, and look forward.
Thank you, Senator. I knew why you put this bill forward, because I read your newsletter.
Well, that's good.
It was right in there.
It is.
Questions for the senator? Okay, we have a witness virtual? Nope. Okay, then we have the Maryland Association of Counties, Kevin Canali. Look at that.
He might have withdrawn his opposition.
Maybe. Thank you, Senator. Senator Zucker, 892.
How are you? Good to see you. Good morning, good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chairman. Feels like we've been working since the early morning, so no rest for the weary, but a lot of work still to be done. Distinguished members of the Budget and Taxation Committee, for the record, Senator Craig Zucker here presenting in support of Senate Bill 892. Mr. Chairman, colleagues, first I want to thank you all because this legislation is regarding education support professionals. There are men and women and individuals who are often behind the scenes but providing invaluable work throughout the public school system. They were the ones that were picking up the pieces when the pandemic hit and there weren't enough bus drivers to drive buses where we had to have the National Guard, and these were the individuals to help with that. These are the individuals helping out in the classrooms with those with special needs as paraeducators. So in recognition of that work, a small token and led by this committee, we provided $1,000 bonuses to education support professionals. And Mr. Chairman, you were instrumental in that, as well as everybody else here, as a small token of saying thank you and our appreciation. Throughout time, we've seen disparities in terms of income, and what we know coming out of the pandemic is it's more important now than ever to retain and attract this type of wonderful personnel. Mr. Chairman, colleagues, I know that We're in a tough budget situation right now with $3 billion structural deficit, so I understand that resources are limited, but I think it's imperative that our first conversation and our last conversation is also involving education support professionals who are vital to our education system. And I would just say that, as we're looking at, when we were looking at making changes to formulas, that we continue to keep education support professionals at the forefront of our conversation. And Mr. Chairman, I know we do that, but it's also good to reflect that in policy. So with that, this was my opportunity to publicly also say thank you to the men and women who are providing these services, and I'd pass it on to my panel.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Delania Akindoyo. I serve as president of ASME Local 1693. I'm here to testify in strong support of Senate Bill 892. I have proudly served as a school custodian with AACPS for nearly 20 years. ASME Local 1693 members make sure children arrive to and from school safely, provide them with hot meals, and make sure their building is healthy and clean. In short, we play a vital role in making our schools function. Our union is in strong support of Senate Bill 892. This legislation would establish a minimum starting pay rate of $25 per hour for our ESPs across Maryland. This legislation is necessary to make certain we are attracting new people into careers, supporting our public schools and our students. Currently, members of our union start at minimum wage. We are losing out on attracting people into these career fields to private employers. We have to raise the starting pay if we want our public schools well-staffed with dedicated individuals to support our students. According to a report in a survey published by MSDA in December of 2024, a majority of ESPs reported that they considered leaving their role due to their pay, and that they struggled to make ends meet for their families, and that they could not handle a major unexpected expense. Members of my union work multiple jobs to make ends meet. In particular, one of my members with a 13-year-old daughter has to work 3 jobs to get by. Certain members in our food service department have to send a check out of their pocket every 2 weeks, every pay period, to the Board of Education to cover the cost of health insurance premiums. At the same time, a majority of ESPs reported that their workload had increased due to vacancies and reductions in workforce. ESPs are on the brink and struggle to get by. We love what we do. We are passionate about our work and making our public schools a safe and healthy learning environment for our kids. Our students need us, and we need compensation that respects and values our work. We respectfully urge the committee to issue a favorable report on Senate Bill 892. Thank you.
Good afternoon, chairs and members of the committee. My name is Paul Lemley. I'm MSEA president representing 75,000 educators across Maryland. You know probably already that I'm a social studies and special education teacher with a national board certification, but today I want to tell you a little bit how I got my start in education and why it's so important that our support professionals have a living wage. I was a professional musician, translation, a vow of poverty, and got a very serious health scare. I had Hodgkin's lymphoma in my late 20s, and decided at that point that I really needed health care and a viable career. And so my first job in a school setting was as a paraprofessional teacher's assistant in a classroom with students with severe emotional and behavioral disabilities. That experience broke a part of the inside of me, and I still have an intact Christmas ornament that one of my students made. It's mostly glue, but about half glitter, and it says, "I'm not going to class." The reason that student made that ornament is because it was my job to make sure he went to class. The one-on-ones with students and the very small groups that our support professionals do, they support that first instruction, hey, did you get that? They do the redos when a student misses class and just needs extra time. They're often our family liaisons and our interpreters. And I do mean that literally, sign language interpreters or other languages. And they're often the technical support in the school in the sense that they're data clerks, our registrars, and our bookkeepers. So we really urge the committee to look at this as a solution to raising wages for our support professionals. Thank you.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. Samantha Zwirling on behalf of MSCA. Senator Zucker actually took part of what I was going to say, which was a thank you. I know that you all see these members of our school systems. You did that through passing the bonus a few years ago, as well as joint chairman's language last year, which was really to look at how can we get data on some of these. You'll see in my written testimony some of the data responses that were there, but over 50% of our education support professionals are saying that they are looking for another job. And as Paul kind of laid out just now, if we're losing these education support professionals to retail jobs, that's a problem. These are folks who are really interacting with our schools, with our students, and with their families. And so, you know, you've heard about who those folks are, and I know that you're in a tough budget year, and we're not naive to that. But I just ask you to think about education support professionals, and overall, as we are kind of looking at the blueprint and potential pauses or cuts or those kinds of things, that all feeds into how we can support the professionals that we have and make it harder for us to eventually get to a living wage for folks. So I know that there's a lot of need in this committee and kind of in this town right now, but you know, our education support professionals are also doing very hard jobs to kind of implement the policies and the outcomes that we want to see for our students. So with that, I thank you and look forward to working with the committee on a future solution. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for this panel? Thank you very much. Christopher Cano. Trina Mills, I'm guessing that's not, yeah.
Her kid was sick, so Paul took her spot.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, so Mr. Chair, honorable members of the committee, my name is Christopher Cano. I'm the Director of Political and Legislative Affairs for SEIU Local 500. You have our written testimony, and I know once you read it, you'll be compelled to give this bill a favorable report. But what I want to do is ground much of what was just said in the data. We represent over 10,000 educational support professionals at Montgomery County Public Schools, which makes up close to half of our membership of the 23,000 workers that we represent in Maryland. And I want you to understand that currently around 20% of our support professionals are eligible for retirement. And around 40% have been at MCPS less than 5 years. So as it was said before, when these folks are looking at, you know, making ends meet, and they're getting paid 18 bucks an hour, and they're not getting 40 hours a week, and they realize they can go to the retail sector, get their 40 hours, make more money, and then we're heading towards a cliff of a staffing crisis in our public schools, not just in Montgomery County, but all over the state. And so I encourage you all that take a look at this bill in all seriousness, that the living wage for the educational support staff, the people who deal with children with special needs, our bus drivers who are entrusted with getting students safely back and forth to school, security personnel who secure our schools and keep them safe, the lunchroom ladies who make sure that they're well fed, the janitors that make sure we have clean and operational facilities, the building facility managers, everyone else who isn't a principal or a teacher in our school system has a role in making sure it runs smoothly and it operates right, and that our students are safe and that they get the education that they need. And this bill will do so much more to making sure that Marylanders, especially those in our school system, are able to survive and pay their rent. I mean, if you look at the statistics in this country, you can't afford a one-bedroom with less than 19 bucks an hour. And less than 19 bucks an hour is the current wage many educational support staff have. So that being said, I encourage you to urge a favorable report on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Thank you very much. We have a virtual. Okay. All right. Senator Maltz show. 803, 836, 962. 963. It's not cheaper by the dozen.
Thank you, Mr. Should I just roll with it? Yeah, you roll. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, colleagues. Would you like me to go in order 803, 830? Okay. I've got a witness for 803, and I'm not sure if she's present or it's Martha Darling Sparks. Is she in the queue? Yeah. She's necessary for 803, and I can begin with that testimony. Senate bill, it's a great honor to be able to present Senate Bill 803. This is a local priority. It's a delegation bill. It alters the time period in Talbot County relating to the tax penalty imposed by the county government for the late payment of the county hotel rental tax, the infamous accommodations tax. This doesn't increase the tax in any way, but it does change the penalty. The bill reduces the time before a penalty must be paid for a late payment from 120 days to 1 month. Very straightforward. Mr. Chair, colleagues, I'd like to turn it over to our expert witness, Mrs. Sparks. Yeah.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name's Martha Darling Sparks, and I'm the Finance Director for Talbot County, Maryland, whose offices are located in Easton, Maryland. Thank you for the opportunity to come before you today to make this request for a change to Maryland Local Government Code Section 20-426 regarding the penalty assessed on unpaid hotel tax, also known as the accommodations tax. Currently, all counties in the state of Maryland, with the exception of Talbot County and Wycomico County, have the ability to assess this penalty within 1 month that the tax is due. Talbot County and Wycomico County must wait until 120 days after that tax is due to assess that penalty. This causes significant hurdles in Talbot County's resources in tracking the compliance of payment with this tax. And we ask, and also I would add that this tax should be collected by the hotels or short-term rentals or those offering overnight lodgings. That tax should be collected from those people who are staying overnight. This is not a tax on the business, so they should already have collected this tax. And there's no real reason for them to delay remittance of that tax beyond 1 month. And we are asking that this be reconsidered to put Talbot County in alignment with the other counties in the state.
Okay. Questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Moving on to our next bill I have the honor to present today. This is very straightforward, and the testimony should be quick. We don't have any witnesses. It's the cross file for a House bill. It's Senate Bill 836. It's the Corporate Income Tax Rate Reduction Act of 2025. This legislation proposes to reduce the corporate income tax from 8.25% to 6.25% by tax year 2029. Respectfully, I understand that the corporate tax rate is already set to be decreased in the current budget proposal. However, this legislation would accelerate that reduction, and it would take it to a lower rate. And I think everyone on the committee is familiar with the arguments for and against the corporate tax rate. And with that, I'll move on to my next legislation.
Questions? Okay. You know, he talks like somebody who wants to come to budget and tax.
Well, you hold your breath, Mr. Chair and Vice Chair. I'm going to let you down here. They're not all that smooth. I've got a big problem in my district. You know, we have a number of small municipalities, and their budgets range from $25,000 to $75,000. And this is dealing with legislative audits, and they're mandated to provide a legislative audit. And the only way they can do a legislative audit is they have to use a certified accountant. And the certified accountants have, they're not they're not inexpensive, as they would say, on the street. Oftentimes, the audits range between $8,000 and $14,000. Currently, we've changed the legislative audit requirement for some of these municipalities to give them a 4-year exemption, but that has proven to still be a problem because every 4 years for these municipalities with these budgets, they're having to pay 10 to 15% of their annual budget to perform a legislative audit while they're already providing similar financial information. This is an attempt to try to provide a little additional relief, but still maintain control and the ability to make sure these finances for these small municipalities don't go sideways. And so what the bill does, it basically says if you have $100,000 or less, I'm going to read from the fiscal note. It creates an annual audit exemption for a municipality in any fiscal year in which the municipal annual revenues are less than $100,000. That would be an exemption in perpetuity unless there's a request for an audit to be made. So they could still be required to provide this legislative audit. I want to thank the Executive Director for the Department of Legislative Services, Mrs. Vicki Gruber, who's been a phenomenal help in trying to put this together. I know there are a number of municipalities that are hanging on and watching very closely to see how we address this. But it is a priority for a lot of the small municipalities in our district. So I'd encourage everybody to look very carefully, and I hope you can find it in your heart and in your vote to give this a favorable, give it a favorable report.
How many municipalities would it cover?
Oh, this would cover all municipalities, but there's a qualifier here. Revenues are less than $100,000. So how many municipalities would that include?
That's my question.
I'm not positive. However, we have a witness coming up from MML who could quantify that for you.
Second question is, you say an audit could be requested. Could be requested by whom?
The audit could be requested by any member of the General Assembly, I believe. Let me make sure.
That sounds a little expansive to me.
Let me make sure I've got that. Notwithstanding. An audit, this section indicates or a financial or accounting. So I apologize. The Joint Audit and Evaluation Committee may request or require a review or audit of the financial records.
Gotcha, the Joint Audit Committee. Okay, thank you.
My apologies.
No, that's great. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Next one up. Oh, I'm sorry.
I have a
I
witness.
apologize. Yep. Justin Fiore, Paul Ellington also signed up.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Justin Fiore here on behalf of the Maryland Municipal League in support of Senate Bill 962 with amendments. The sponsor did a great job talking about the problem for low-budget municipalities. We've seen these audits increase significantly over the years. Some of the factors for that are in my written testimony, but you can imagine these are getting expensive by the thousands of dollars, and we're talking about population sizes probably under 150, 100 residents. So sharing that burden across a large municipality, not so big a challenge. Sharing it across a municipality of 50 residents, obviously a substantial issue for us. So our testimony is support with amendment. We're just offering some other concepts here that may work to kind of resolve this problem. One is having the Office of Legislative Audits help perform some of these audits for smaller municipalities. The other one is to have a review, a financial review in place of an audit. That still involves an independent third-party CPA. It's just the process isn't as costly as a full audit. So if that third-party individual flags something as, potentially an issue, then maybe an audit makes sense in that case, but it still keeps the third party in the process. To your question, Senator Rosa Pepp, about the number of municipalities, looking at some of DLS's data in past years for budget size, we're aware of 11 that currently fit. But if I look at a couple of the other names that haven't submitted information for one reason or another, probably because they're late on an audit, we're at maybe closer to 15 total. 15?
Questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Moving right along, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, committee members, it's an honor to present Senate Bill 963, and I believe we have two witnesses to support this legislation, Mr. David Zinner and Ms. Katie Myers. Not sure if they're in the room or not. If not, with your permission, I'll proceed. Okay. David or Katie? Would it be okay to proceed, and if they come in, they can join me? Okay. This legislation, Senate Bill 963, establishes the Abandoned and Neglected Cemeteries Fund and the Abandoned and Neglected Cemeteries Fund checkoff on the individual income tax return form. The purpose of the fund is to provide for the care, preservation, maintenance, and restoration of abandoned and neglected cemeteries in the state. By September 30th annually, the Secretary of Labor must report to the General Assembly on the administration of the fund. It's a straightforward proposal, kind of mirroring other checkoffs on income tax forms. This will be housed at the Department of Labor. It's a fund that will be created for the preservation of abandoned and neglected cemeteries.
Questions? Any of the witnesses here? Okay. You are done.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, committee members,
Thank you.
and I wish you a great day.
Thank you. It's been special having you here. All right. How about Hershey?
There we go.
This is when we usually have a musical interlude. We have two more bills, and then the governor's bill. So we're sort of waiting for everybody. See everybody here? We're all waiting for you, Senator. We're all just...
Mr. Chairman, I'll remove the unfavorable request.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, good.
Dr. Lieber's virtual.
Yes, okay.
8:43.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Senator Steve Hershey to present Senate Bill 843, which alters the local, state, and cost share of school construction for the following criteria. The percentage of students in eligible counties for free and reduced price meals is greater than the statewide average. All schools in the county participate in the U.S. Department of Agriculture community eligibility provisions. Kent County is one of 7 counties in which all its schools participate. The state and local cost share must be 50% state and 50% local. The eligible project must be a school that is only elementary, middle, or high school in the county. I'm sorry, the only, okay. Kent County is the only one with 1 middle school or high school. Kent County is the only county that will meet all of the bill's criteria and will put the county in a better position to move forward with the approved replacement of the county's only middle school. This middle school was built in 1950 and last renovated in 1976. I have an amendment in the file that will put a 3-year sunset and narrows the language down to a county that only has 1 middle school and 1 high school in the county. Senate Bill 843 is supported by the Kent County Commissioners, although Commissioner Fithian could not be here today, and the Kent County Board of Education. I ask for your favorable consideration of Senate Bill 843.
Thank you, Senator. What's the current match?
Current match? Dr. Lever may know, but
Where can I have that?
yeah.
Current
We can get it.
Match is 27.9,
Yeah,
and the county pledge is 28.9.
27.9 it looks like. And this would bring it up to 50.
From,
Is that right?
That's
Yeah.
what I believe.
Yeah.
Dr. Lieberman, correct.
Dr.
did
Lever
I
might.
mishear your bill was to create a 50-50?
Yes.
Okay, well, we'll listen.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
So good afternoon, Chair and Vice Chair, members of the committee. I'm Dr. Mary McComas, the Superintendent of Kent County Public Schools. Did you know that Kent County Middle School students lost 3 days of education this year due to our failing infrastructure? More specifically, as mentioned, we have 1 middle school. It was built in 1950 with renovations last done in the 1970s. To that point, we had a feasibility study conducted about 2 years ago, which indicated it was not financially feasible to repair or renovate this facility. Specifically to that point, in the last 19 months alone, we have spent $130,000 on emergency repairs related to the roof, HVAC system, and most recently our failing sewer system. The IAC, in fact, acknowledged that Kent County has the oldest average age of schools of all the counties in the state. Inaction would actually be more expensive to manage these repairs. Do you know the level of poverty and demographics in Kent County schools? We have approximately 1,700 students, all of whom will pass through the doors of our middle school. And of those 1,700, 1,000 of them are economically disadvantaged by the state definition. As mentioned, all of our schools qualify for the concentration of poverty schools beginning July 1st, and every school offers the community eligibility provision providing free lunch and breakfast to address our food insecurity. Ethnically, we have 50% of our students are Black and brown students, and 50% are white. And do you know overall that Kent County is the smallest of all counties by population in the state? We have a total of approximately 1,900 citizens. If you take the students out, that leaves about 17,300 to cover the cost of our local share. That averages out to be just shy of 2,000 per person, or 8,000 per family of 4. Kent is already at the maximum and is trying to do its maximum. We have the highest income tax. We have the highest property tax on the Eastern Shore and is 7th highest in the state overall. Is that for me? That's for me.
You can finish.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And our median household income is 16 out of 24. In closing, Kent County public school students are disproportionately disadvantaged by both poverty and our overall lack of the economy of scale. Thank you for the opportunity.
Mr. Chairman, just to go back to your question, it's currently 50-50. This would bring it to 3466. Right. I'm sorry. To go back to the chairman's question, it's currently 50-50. This would bring it to 3466. Correct. Okay.
Yep, so I got it. Thank you. Good afternoon, Vice Chair, Chair, committee members. My name is Tyree Johnson, and I am the family liaison here, representing Kent County Public School System and Kent County Middle School. I am a community member of Kent County. I grew up in Kent County, and so I'm here in support of this bill wholeheartedly. It's dear to my heart, per se, because growing up in Kent County in poverty, someone who had his grandparents raise him, I can say firsthand that having a good school makes a whole lot of a difference. Myself, I worked at this company in my community for over 23 years as a mechanical engineer, and decided 3 years ago that I was going to step out on faith, give up that career as an engineer, and go back to my school system and become an instructional assistant to make a difference. And so during that time, I've actually been able to pull together a strong team, build after-school tutoring programs. I've also been able to help increase the parent-family engagements. And so one thing I can say is that when we have these parent-family engagements and events and stuff like that, bringing parents out, they want to see their kids in a school that's actually like working pretty good. Like I can say, for example, last year I did an event in the springtime, and I was so worried about whether we was gonna have working bathrooms. So I had to rent porta potties to have that done. This year we had to close our school 3 times because of the bathroom issues. We have the ceilings leaking. So I encourage this bill wholeheartedly, and I just feel as though if we all work together and step out, and I gotta say it, just I'm speaking from the heart, sacrifice, because I made a sacrifice. If we make this sacrifice and support this bill for our kids, we can make the difference for our community. And so I just thank you for this time, and I just encourage this that we pass this bill for our students. Thank you.
Questions for the panel? Yes.
How much money are we talking about? Do we have a cost estimate for the building?
The whole project was 86.5 million, and we are looking at trying to close a gap of around 12 million. We are currently working with the architects to try to trim that down because as you know, we only have about 600 students in their middle school.
Excuse me, 400 students?
Yeah, it's a low number, and that's part of our challenge is the IAC, to meet all of our program requirements. Doesn't match up really with what our funding is for the size of our student population.
Right, I can't do the money calculation in my head, but that's an extremely high cost per student. That's something that a lot of us have worked on over the years.
Right. It points to that economy of scale. It is more expensive to educate fewer kids than it is if you have a school of 1,000 students, because you still need a gymnasium, you still need the music room, you still need all the programming space, but you have fewer students per funding.
Do you have an actual, not a 200-page design of the school, but a few-page description of what would be in the school and how much it would cost?
Yeah. Mr. Vice Chair, Mr. Lever is on with us as well, too. He's supposed to be on the sponsor panel. He might be able to answer a few of those questions in his testimony.
Okay, oh, that's fine. We can come back to him. That's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's go right there. Good to see you. Nope, you're on mute. Dr. Lever, you're on mute. Oh, there you go. You can begin. Huh. Can you hear me?
Hear you. Can you hear me, sir?
Oh, now I can.
Can you hear me now?
Go ahead. Yep, go ahead.
Okay. My testimony, I'm here to testify in favor of Senate Bill 843. For the record, my name is David Lee. I'm sorry. Okay.
We can hear you. We can hear you. Yep.
Okay. My name is David Lever. I'm an architect. I'm a former director of the Maryland Public School Construction Program from 2003 to 2016. I've assisted Kent County Public Schools since 2017. This bill essentially addresses an issue of equity. As stated, the middle school
froze there. You froze for a second. Go ahead. You can continue.
I think as stated, the students in Kent County don't have access to the same educational quality as students in other school systems. Every student has to pass through this middle school. It's very deficient. My written testimony outlines some of the reasons why. We looked at, this results in there being not prepared for high school. There's no science laboratory, for instance, that's purpose designed. Renovation would be more expensive than replacement. We've looked into that. I do understand the importance of abiding by regulations and rules, and I understand this is a change. I was responsible for writing the regulations that the school system operates under right now. And we are looking for a change because of an equity issue, allow the students to have the same opportunities as elsewhere. We're making every effort to reduce the square footage, which is the main source of the costs. The project is in design. It will be ready for construction at the beginning of the new year. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
So how have you looked at other systems, probably on the shore, smaller systems, and is anyone else similarly situated? Did you hear me? Hello?
Yeah.
Dr. Lever, we had looked at Somerset County. Was that accurate with respect to how the funding was? Do you recall that?
I think it's Garrett County.
Kent County is the only school system that hasn't had a new schools. I can hear you, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you. You can keep talking.
Yeah, Somerset County did a middle school that was probably 15 or more years ago. The cost would not be at all comparable. And it was only for 2 grades. We're looking at a middle school for 4 grades, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th. So they're not really comparable. There is a delay. I'm finding a delay in the transmission.
Okay, we heard you. That was good. Thank you. Senator McCray, I don't know who your question's for, but.
I'll ask the good senator.
Okay.
I believe we've been talking about this specific school for a while, and I was just curious, like, how long have we been talking about it? And while you talk that it's a $12 million gap, I'm imagining as we're having these conversations, the cost is also going up, which is somewhat of a challenge. If you could speak to that.
Senator, you're correct. I think we have been discussing the school for, a number of years through legislation. I think it's been in at least the last 3 years. It has gotten, I wouldn't say a favorable report out of appropriations, but at least it had been looked at as something that they wanted to try to find a way to accommodate. Again, I think the important part also is the size of Kent County, and as we've gone through a number of different education policies, Kent County has always been a county with declining enrollment as well as a declining population. You know, just keep in mind, Kent County has less than 20,000 people in the entire county, okay? And 1 high school and 1 middle school. And as I said, this middle school is 75 years old right now. And so we are trying to find the best way to educate our students in Kent County. We have done a number of things to try to bring down the costs. And, you know, again, unfortunately, to some extent, we are under the guidelines of how a school in Maryland needs to be constructed with square footages, with different areas. And as the superintendent said, it makes it much more difficult, the economies of scale, when you're trying to build a school for a smaller population, but yet carry all of those additional costs. So we have met over and over again to try to find a way that could we bring the cost down, that we could be able to just do within this 50-50 match that we currently have. I see that the actual gap is 8.8 million. So in the grand scheme of things, it is not a lot of money to be able to find a way to accomplish this. And unfortunately, the only way that we've been able to do that is to try to get a very narrowly focused piece of legislation that would just bring in Kent County and this school and as not to affect all the other counties as well.
I think it's important to state also, just thank you for your leadership. Great points,
Thank you very much.
How many square feet are planned?
Dr. Lever, could you answer that question? How many square feet?
What is the question again?
How many square
How many square feet?
We are looking at a school right now in design about 92,500, and we're looking at a number of ways to bring that down significantly by about 5,000 square feet. Were you able to hear my answer?
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I can hear your answer, and that's helpful.
Right
First
now,
of all,
design 92,500, and we're looking at a way to bring that down by about 5,000 square feet.
okay, I appreciate that. First of all, I want to say I'm very sympathetic to this. I've not visited your middle school. I have visited your one high school.
Yes, you have.
And small is beautiful. So, I mean, Kent has a lot of advantages that some of the bigger counties don't have, but some disadvantages too. So I totally agree with Senator McCray in terms of your leadership on this. And I got a call from the mayor of Chestertown, who's an old friend of mine, who wanted to tell me why he thought this was very important. So I'm very, very sympathetic, and I'm sympathetic to having the state do a bigger share of it. I'm very concerned about the cost. And Mr. Lever knows this, Dr. Lever knows that very, very well, and some of the colleagues here know that very, very well. It's something that I've worked on for a long time. At $86 million, it's $215 per student, which it's a small school, but College Park Academy, this public charter school that I'm on the board of in our area, 50,000 square feet, 650 kids, and this was 7 years ago, so prices have gone up. I got all that, but I'd be amazed if there's any school been built ever in the state of Maryland anywhere close to $215,000 per student. So, I encourage you to try to reduce the square footage. I know it's hard politically in a school because everybody wants more. I've been involved in these school design meetings with everybody. Everybody wants more. But there are smaller schools, both public and private, where kids get great educations. And it's what goes on inside the school that really counts. And so I'd urge you really to try to bring the cost down. And I would like, if you can, to provide offline just a summary of the numbers.
Yeah, Mr. Vice Chair, again, it's unfortunate that Dr. Lever's conversation is going in and out, but honestly, he's done an excellent job of presenting this to not only myself, but the delegation as well, too, a number of times. So maybe if we could schedule a meeting, Dr. Lever could come in and present what he's presented to us. That would be great.
I would really appreciate that.
It'd be very helpful.
Super. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. You know, I understand where you're coming from, and I think it's wonderful to be looking at a new school for the kids, but I can't help but think that building them a school that's, I wouldn't say less, I would say much smaller than other kids in the state have in a school. That part of me in the back of my brain is saying, don't they deserve to have a decent sized school too? So just keep that thought in mind when you're deciding you want to do that.
It is a very delicate balance that we're trying to obtain to try to, one, do what is necessary to get the price in a range that is affordable, and obviously that's why we're here for additional system assistance, but at the same time, as we said, it is also a matter of equity, and we want to make sure that these students in Kent County have the same access to education as students from across the state.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
All right. Okay, we are back to that same place.
Waiting.
Yeah, we're good. Senator Quarterman's out doing a bill in another committee, and we are waiting for the governor. So, feel free to talk amongst yourselves. for those who are here for capital, we still have a way to go. So if you're here for capital, we've got 2 more bills, and one of them's going to probably take a little while. So just so you have some sense of your day.
Thanks, sir.
Well, I mean.
Okay, we're gonna get started. We're gonna get started, please. Hello, can we take our seats, please? All right, we're going to continue now with Senate Bill 427, Economic Development. And of course, pleased to welcome the governor up to the table, and whoever you'd like to bring up. And let me just say this. Mr. Chair. Excuse me? Just want to say, it's pretty amazing that we're now seeing you twice in this session, and I just want to say how grateful I am for that. We went by many years without seeing a governor, or they come occasionally, but here you are twice in the session, and very grateful for your presence and your willingness to come and chat with us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'd say and thank you for the opportunity. It really means a lot, and honestly, it's not lost on any of us the fact that you all are giving us the chance to testify on behalf of a bill that we believe in, and we're grateful for, because many of you had such an important role in helping to craft and shape and get it to where it is right now. For the record, my name is Wes Moore, Governor of the state of Maryland, and
could you repeat that?
And thank you all for having me here and allowing our entire team to be here. All of who played a very important role in terms of helping this to come to fruition. This bill that we have here, the Decade Act, it is an incredibly important part of what we believe is our long-term and important drive to create the kind of economic growth that Maryland is going to need to be able to navigate this moment, and also to be able to really win this decade. And I thought it was important to also say that as we talk about what the future for the next decade is, I do think it's important to have in context of the past decade and why that helped to inform the type of things that we wanted to drive inside of this bill. What we saw for a past decade was we saw how our economy in the state of Maryland grew at less than half of the national average. For the state of Maryland, for the past 20 years, have needed cuts in 17 of the last 20 budgets in order to balance. That we saw that while our spending increased during that time period, over the 7 years prior, we saw a 70% increase in spending. It did not spurn the kind of economic growth that we would have hoped for. And so we saw we were spending, but we weren't growing. And so we all know that in order to really get the economy moving, in order to really make the kind of not just investments, but enhancements that we're hoping for, there's only one right answer. And the answer is growth. It's not going to, we're not going to tax our way out. We're not going to cut our way out. You've just got to focus on growing the economy. And if we can do that, then I think we're able to really capture the larger assets that we have within the state of Maryland. And that's really what the Decade Act focuses on. There's three basic platforms that we're offering inside of the Decade Act. The first one is that we have to focus our investments on high growth and high potential sectors. And that includes things like making sure that Maryland becomes the capital of quantum, making sure that Maryland becomes the capital of AI, making sure that Maryland becomes a capital of clean energy, making sure that we can become a capital of cybersecurity, and making sure that we can focus on aerospace and defense. The second is that we've got to double down on business attraction, business development, and business expansion, and really making it more attractive for businesses to be able to choose the state of Maryland, and making it more attractive to businesses to stay in the state of Maryland. And the third is that we've got to invest in programs that are working, and that we have got to sunset those programs that are not. And when I say working, it means real, quantifiable evidence of working. And in this proposed budget, we've directed $128 million that are going towards these targeted investments. But one thing that I know each of you know, and we're very clear on, is that more money does not mean growth, is that the capital is strategically important, but there's got to be a strategy behind how you're actually utilizing the capital and how you're maintaining accountability around it. And so our administration has studied dozens of state initiatives that are designed to grow our economy. We've pored over countless reports, over state documents, over internal reviews, analysis from DLS and the Department of Commerce and also the private sector. And we are marrying data and strategy with this type of platform, with this bill. And it's going to really help us to sharpen our tools and our toolkit to make us better stewards of the taxpayer dollars, which is the ultimate goal. We are going to put our assets up against anyone else in the country, because I believe if you put our assets against anyone else in the country, whether it is NASA Goddard or NASA Wallops, whether it's Fort Meade or APG, whether it's Frostburg in the West or UMES in the East, that we have everything we need right here in order to be successful, but we've got to make sure we're actually investing in them and leveraging them and using them towards the target investments that we think are going to produce the kind of ROI that we're hoping for. And we've got to be able to do a better job of leveraging those assets to drive that private sector growth. The Decade Act is a core part of that strategy. I know it is a long bill. It's over 130 pages long, so thank you for indulging us with it. But every single page is really inspired with a larger spirit that we have, that we can build out our state programs that are going to get us closer to dominating these industries and making sure that we are going to repeal or repel or revamp those state programs that are not fulfilling the intent and they're not fulfilling the hopes that we have for them. We are going to use this as an opportunity, not just to making sure we're defending our incumbent industries, a lot of the eds, the feds, and the meds, but also means we've got to have the courage to be able to look at what the data is showing us about these new industries of growth and saying, what can Maryland look like if we actually invested in those? Because I am a big believer that making these investments is not risky. Not making these investments is actually much riskier. And just continuing on a pace where we have slow and stagnant growth at a time when the rest of the country is just growing faster than us. And so I'm thankful for the opportunity to be here. Look forward to now welcoming the other panelists to come in and present as well. I'm thankful to them, but look forward also to answering any questions that the committee might have. But thank you very much again, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Please.
Good afternoon.
Anybody have any questions for the governor first before we start?
For the record, I'm Harry Coker, Acting Secretary of the Maryland Department of Commerce. The challenges that Maryland faces are complex and multifaceted, and now it's more important than ever for Maryland to make these strategic investments in growing our economy. Several provisions of the Decade Act will allow commerce to be more nimble, more effective, and more responsive to shifts in economic and market conditions moving forward. The Decade Act revamps the Buy Maryland Cyber Credit largely by removing arbitrary program restrictions to make the program more effective and more beneficial to Maryland-based firms. This proposal takes the recommendations of both the Cybersecurity Association and DLS to make the following meaningful improvements. It eliminates the size of the company that can be considered a qualified buyer for the credit. It increases the limit on annual revenue for a business to be considered a qualified seller for the credit. It increases the amount of credits that can be claimed by a qualified buyer for purchases from a single qualified seller. It eliminates the requirements that 25% of the credit be awarded to qualified buyers that purchase cybersecurity services as opposed to products. And perhaps most importantly, it makes the tax credit refundable so that nonprofits or businesses that are pre-revenue can benefit from the incentives to make their companies more secure. This program, if utilized more fully, is really a win-win. It incentivizes Maryland businesses to purchase cybersecurity products and services from Maryland cyber companies, and it will allow nonprofits to also benefit from the program. This revamped program should make Maryland companies and nonprofits more secure and support our state's cybersecurity companies. The bill also strengthens and rebrands two of our primary small business assistance programs. The Maryland Small Business Development Financing Authority, or MSBDFA, and the Small Minority and Women-Owned Business Account, or SMWOBA. Increasing the amount of assistance that can be provided is important to modernize MSBDFA and make it more effective. but splitting the VLT revenue is the most critical update in this section of the bill. Ms. Bitfa provides access to capital to disadvantaged borrowers that cannot access traditional banking, but has been largely reliant on special funds. Splitting this funding stream with SMWOBA provides sustainable revenue to keep funding available for those business owners. And because SMWOBA is a revolving loan fund, it is capitalized to a level that it can continue to lend the same amounts annually. Ultimately, this will make different forms of assistance available for the businesses served by both SMWOBA and Ms. Bitfa, and it will do it in a revenue-neutral way. I'll yield to others to discuss other specific provisions, but the Maryland Commerce Department respectfully requests a favorable report on this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair. For the record, Kelly Schultz, CEO of the Maryland Tech Council. And on behalf of the Maryland Tech Council's now nearly 900 members from life sciences and tech companies doing business in Maryland, we strongly support the Decade Act and thank Governor Moore and his administration for introducing it. We applaud the administration's strategic examination of the economic development tools across numerous state agencies and programs. This bill has many important reforms, but I want to just highlight two for you here today. The first is the target industry sectors. The bill requires the Department of Commerce to evaluate the potential employment and economic growth of Maryland's industry sectors and establish a list of industry sectors and activities to be considered for additional state investment and support. The governor has already identified 3 industries we must invest in: life science, IT, and aerospace and defense. The governor also speaks about Maryland being the capital of quantum, AI, clean energy, and biotech. Our members could not agree more with this strategic focus, and aligning state government agencies and resources with these key industry sectors will help ensure that we are growing our strengths. The second area that I wanted to speak about is the research and development tax credits. The Maryland Tech Council particularly supports this proposal to extend the R&D tax credit program through at least June 30th of 2030. We have numerous members who have benefited from this program and believe it is one of the state's most effective economic tools. We surveyed our members and about the importance of this program, and I want to read one quote that came from one of our members, which is a medium-sized business here in Maryland. They say, the R&D tax credit has been instrumental in enabling our business to expand research initiatives, develop groundbreaking technologies, and attract top-tier talent to Maryland. These investments not only drive innovation, but also create high-quality jobs and contribute to Maryland's leadership in the biotechnology and life sciences sectors. So, by reducing the financial burden of R&D, the program fosters a competitive business environment, attracts investment, and strengthens Maryland's position as a hub for technological development. For these reasons and more, we would like to thank the administration for their work, and we strongly support the passage of the Decade Bill. Thank you so much.
Great. Good afternoon. For the record, I'm Mark Anthony Thomas, and I lead the Greater Baltimore Committee, serving as its first CEO since our merger with the Economic Alliance of Greater Baltimore. And we recently announced the acquisition of Upsurge, which supports the tech startup community within the Baltimore region. And what that's done is unified our voices around how to strengthen our economy. For 2 years, the administration has worked closely with industry leaders to put the state on the right path for private sector growth and reposition Maryland for jobs and for a competitive economy. It is this moment of crisis that has transformed so many American states that we now look to for leaders in industry. The Great Recession helped span the life sciences revolution in Massachusetts. It positioned New York as the international rival for Silicon Valley's tech economy, and the Great Recession also sparked manufacturing innovation that you see that spans from the Southwest to the southern states, many which compete against Maryland for everything from semiconductors to energy innovation. But this is Maryland's moment. And the governor's proposal, which is well thought out, has fundamentally reoriented our state to deliver three objectives that are critical for our long-term financial viability for our communities, for businesses, and for investors looking for new markets. First, it creates and improves the tools that economic development deals depend on. It enhances critical programs, and it will speed up funding to make things happen faster. This will augment work that is underway to brand Maryland as a state with tremendous economic assets and distinct regional economies while investing in workforce development, which is a decisive factor for so many deals. The bill also identifies the strategic industries that we've discussed today. This will galvanize not just state resources, but academic and private sector resources to make big bets required for us to win the future and advance our standing as an innovation-driven contributor to America's technology and national security objectives. Most importantly, it impacts every industry that our state depends on. It sets the foundation for continued focus on economic growth and centers economic growth really within the work the government and the private sector leaders must equally invest in for our state to thrive. And so we're grateful to support the Decade Act, and I look forward to being part of how we implement it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be short. Brad Fallon with the Office of the Governor, just here to help answer any questions. Thank you so much.
Corbett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Governor, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And I appreciate the spirit that this comes with as we talk about growing our economy and our economic growth throughout Maryland. I particularly appreciate the pillars when you talk about aerospace and defense and things we can do there across all parts of Maryland. You've been to our airport out in Western Maryland, and we think the opportunities there are tremendous. And we hope that those opportunities will be able to be encouraged through legislation like this. Where I have concerns, though, looking through this is when, we see in the Burford with the enterprise zones being removed, and then particularly in this legislation, we talk about the One Maryland job tax credit and some of these other things that the rural areas and some of the outlying areas have utilized in the past. And I guess my question to you, is there anything in here specifically targeting to more areas, I guess, of geographic diversity, so to speak? The rural areas, the tier 1 areas, really, because I know the problem with the One Maryland job tax credit, we understand the tier 2 counties were kind of sucking it all up, so to speak, and it wasn't utilized, I don't think, in the manner that we all envisioned it or appreciated it and wanted to see it happen. And so I guess the question to you again, is there a way to target those tier 1 areas to truly incentivize the areas of the state that really need that growth? Look, all of Maryland is struggling, we get that. And the One Maryland approach is we're all in this together, and we get that too. But there are certain pockets and parts of the state which are struggling far more than others. And we really like to see an opportunity for those areas to be incentivized in a way that really uplifts them and gives them those opportunities to be on the same kind of level playing field. So again, if we could find a way to work towards that geographic diversity to kind of incentivize some of the Western Maryland's Eastern Shores, the areas that really see those significant economic challenges.
Thank you so much, Senator, and thank you not just for the question, but the partnership. And we look forward to working with you on that. Actually, it was in making sure that we can have a greater measure of geographic diversification was actually part of the spirit of the Decade Act, because we looked at some of the other incentives and some of the other tax credits that were laid out before. And you're absolutely right, where we saw where the intent of it was actually not meeting the actual product. One Maryland is actually a great example where, to your point, One Maryland was used and intended so you can have economic growth within Western Maryland, the Baltimore City region, et cetera. And by far, the Baltimore City region ended up becoming the greatest beneficiary of it. And so it did not have the same kind of expansive growth that I think the tax credit was actually intending for and hoping for. And so part of the reason that we said we wanted to rethink some of these platforms that were the right intent, that had the right focus, but were not producing the kind of ROI that we wanted to hope for, is saying, what are the things we actually can do to make sure that there's real measurements of accountability and targeted economic support? So, for example, when you look at things like the Western Maryland Economic Development Fund, which is now in there, that is something that is specific geographically when it comes to economic growth within Western Maryland. When you're looking at some of these specific industries that we have laid out, whether it be IT or life sciences, frankly, these are areas that I'm just as bullish in when it comes to Western Maryland as I am within Center Maryland, or when you're looking at aerospace and defense, that we are just as excited about the leveraging of NASA Wallops and what that's going to mean for for the Eastern Shore or the Lower Shore as it is for anywhere else within the state of Maryland. So we're actually hoping, and it is our belief, that the Decade Act, along with the other complementary platforms that we're introducing, are ways of being able to actually spurn economic growth that the entire state sees. Because if you have growth in one part and then you have decline in another part, you're not growing. At best, you're staying par. And that, I think, has been part of the challenge that we've been able to see. And that's why in this 130 plus pages, there is not just investments that we're talking about, but it also is about what are the places that we are going to repeal and revamp, because some of the initiatives that have been laid out are just not showing the quantitative ROI that we're hoping for.
No, and I appreciate those comments sincerely and agree with you on all those points. I look forward to working with you and your folks here to continue to incentivize those areas of the state. I also appreciate you bringing up the Western Maryland Investment Fund. Mr. Chairman, I believe we're here on that bill tomorrow, so if you'd like to come back to our committee again tomorrow to testify on that, we will welcome your appreciation and support.
If I had a vote, you'd have it.
Thank you, sir. All right.
Mr. Chair, Governor, good to see you
Good to see
again.
you too. Thanks,
Interesting panel you have there, make up with the panel. Good to see
It's a
everybody
good
there.
panel.
It's a great panel. Mine's more of a comment. It's a very interesting bill. Actually dug into it this weekend at Drill. I had some time down, so I was able to read. I think it's going to do a lot of great things. And my only concern is the storm that we're in right now financially. There are decisions being made that I think could hinder this in the future. And that's with some of the taxes that are coming. And I'm not talking about stuff you necessarily proposed, but there's some stuff coming across the street. You know, you talked about business expansion, you know, business growth, trying to attract businesses. And businesses look at that. You know, if they're going to come to Maryland, that's one of the things they definitely look at. And I just want you to remember that as you talk to some of our colleagues, both in this chamber and the other chamber. You know, remember as you say to them, hey, some of the actions we're going to take could have some recourse in affect this. And, you know, whether they pass it or not, you know, you still have the veto pen. And please consider that, because that is what businesses look at. That's what I hear the most, because I'm in business development myself. When I talk to them, a lot of them are saying, hey, what is the biggest impact we're going to face should we relocate here? Whether the C-suites, what are they going to face personally, or the actual corporate structure? So that's just kind of my comment that, you know, I know we're trying to figure out how to cover this budget right now. And I know there are all kinds of different tax proposals, but those will have definite impact to some of the goodness that this bill is going to do.
I appreciate it, and I believe you're absolutely right. And so I look forward to working with you and members of the other chamber to make sure we get to a smart solution that is going to make our state more economically competitive.
Thank you, Governor. Good to see you again.
Great
Come
to see
back
you,
anytime.
Senator. Thank you.
And good to see the rest of your panel, including former Secretary Schultz here. Worked very closely with her over the years. Couple things. One is, I've been around a little while, and I've seen lots of tax credits come and go. And they generally are pitched as, this is going to lead to an explosion of economic activity. And I haven't been around that long, but it hasn't happened while I've been here. And I'm skeptical of it, to tell you the honest God truth, is primarily because I don't think that growth is driven primarily by marginal tax rates. I think it's driven, as you can imagine, I would say, and believe, by the quality of the workforce. And geography, obviously. We have a port in Baltimore because where the port is, not by tax breaks. So one of the things I'm very pleased about this bill is you're getting rid of some. So I want to encourage you to move in that direction, because I think a lot of this stuff sounds good and doesn't really produce much. That's question number one. That's point number one. Number two, though, I look forward to talking offline about the specifics in your proposals for these new, and I'm not going to take time in the committee right now because I do want to understand them better. But I want to focus in on AI, because you're recognizing correctly, the administration is overall, that AI is a big, big deal. I guess my concern is, and for those of you who didn't have a chance to read this morning's New York Times, Ezra Klein has a great interview with Ben Buchanan, who is President Biden's AI advisor, all about how they looked at it in the last presidential administration. And the big takeaway is, which I've heard certainly from my private sector colleagues, is AI is highly likely to be, for white-collar workers, what the 19th century was for farmers and the early 20th century or mid-20th century was for factory workers. Productivity moves in a direction that eliminates jobs, that requires people who have skills. And in this article, this fellow Buchanan who worked for the Biden administration used the example of, I worry about the 19-year-old college student who's studying marketing, which AI is going to blow away the need for their skills in 2 years. Now, that may be hyperbolic, but I must say, I don't think it is hyperbolic. I think AI is moving that fast, and I see it moving fast. And frankly, in our subcommittee, we've been asking each of the agencies, your agencies, what are they doing with AI? And some are doing more than others, but some are really doing great things in it. And so I'd ask you to, if anyone would like to comment on it, but also think about the job-changing effects of AI in terms of our economy, because we want to avoid the terrible transition we had from the from the farm economy then to the industrial economy, which people who are smarter than I am think is highly likely in a much shorter period of time with AI.
I'm happy to, sir.
Please, please.
Mr. Vice Chair, how are you?
Good.
I'm always happy to talk workforce,
I know.
especially with you. So it's very interesting that you bring up this conversation about the workforce in AI, because there's obviously the fear that was in the article today, and there's been articles that have been written about that for the past couple of years as the idea of artificial intelligence continues to grow. I would think that the appropriate path going forward is to be able to make sure that our skills are aligned with the needs from an AI community. And I had a conversation with one of my members yesterday about how they want to focus their outreach and their education on the fact that we can't get rid of all of those people in those white-collar jobs, because we still need that human interaction with the most successful AI opportunities to be able to have humans identifying what the good data is that's being inputted from the bad data and how we're going to be able to come upon being able to produce the best product. So it's as important to have the best data scientists there to be able to manage the AI process as it is to still have those, as you called them, white-collar professionals understanding the implementation of what AI is looking to be able to produce. Sir?
That's great.
Yeah, no, I'll add, because this is definitely an important point. Where Maryland has a special opportunity is to be at the front end of the AI revolution. And when you look at all the good that AI can produce, when you see energy, healthcare, all these areas where those efficiencies can truly save lives and make a big impact, we have an opportunity to be at the front end of that. That said, we do have to ensure our workforce is resilient and adapting skills that are will outlast this pace of innovation, knowing it will be pretty rapid.
I appreciate that, but I think it's a question of quantity. There obviously are going to be jobs for people. They're definitely going to be, just as when people moved off the farm, there were still jobs. When factories closed, when Sparrows Point closed. But the mix of jobs, the skills for the jobs, changed dramatically in very disruptive ways for people in Maryland and across the United States and, frankly, in the industrialized West. Yeah. And I would encourage the administration to be thinking strategically about this, because our past transitions, as we know, have not been very well managed. Yeah. And this may be a bigger transition than the last one. And in any case, it's highly likely to come a lot faster. And so in addition to wanting to grow the use of AI, and I'm all for that, I'm very forward-leaning on AI, and I want the state government to use it as aggressively as possible. But I also don't want to leave the working people behind. So I'd encourage you to be thinking about that strategically as we go forward with this.
Yes, yes, sir. And we completely disagree. We completely agree. For the record, we completely agree. And not only do I echo what I thought were great comments, both from Secretary Schultz and also Ms. Thomas. It is something that this administration is thinking aggressively on, and not just thinking about how does the introduction of AI, regenerative AI, not looking at it that it has to be a net negative when it comes to jobs as well. We actually think it's going to open up new opportunities and new employment opportunities. But to your point, we've got to make sure that we're getting ahead of it. We have to make sure that we're working with industry and education to make sure that we are on the cutting edge and the leading edge of it. And to that point, and again, I think Secretary Schultz said it really well, is it is happening. It is taking place right now, literally as we speak. We want to make sure that we are not on the back end of what that revolution actually looks like, and we want to make sure that we're actually helping to drive the conversation, and not just essentially the participants or the recipients of what other people are driving when it comes to AI technologies and its benefit for not just humanity but also its benefit for the workforce.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've been on the Budget and Taxation Committee since 2007, and I'd like to search back and see how many bills I've put in on R&D tax credits, because it's just always been such an important issue with the business community. And to me, it's probably one of the most important tax credits that we've developed, because it not only helps the big guys, but the small guys too. And I've heard from them over and over and over again. They've come to Annapolis to talk about the help that was to their businesses. So I'm still cheering on for the R&D.
Yes, ma'am. That's great. And we agree, and we're thankful for it, Senator, because also to your point about how it actually really also impacts the little guys, is it impacts those who oftentimes do not have the capital for their own internal R&D processes, and that oftentimes it's the little guys. So you're absolutely right. It probably has a larger and an outside benefit to the smaller entities than it even does to the larger assets. Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions for this panel? Governor, everyone, thank you so much.
Chairman, Vice Chair, bless you all. Thank you so much. Thanks for having us.
We have a second administration panel. They want to come up. Mr. Hughes, Bakari, Cornish, Sadowski, Stovall. Would you ever like to start?
Want to do it again?
Certainly. Good afternoon. I'm Jim Hughes, Senior Vice President for Economic Development, and also representing the University System of Maryland. We are very enthused about this bill, about the decade bill. As you all know, with 12 institutions throughout the state, University System of Maryland is very involved and has a very strong impact on the economies throughout the state, and of course, mostly through our graduates. But also, we have increasingly focused on economic development. So many of the universities have research parks, incubators. Over 9,000 people work at those research parks with over 200 companies. And as we look at this bill, we're very pleased by Department of Commerce, TEDCO and MEDCO working together in the way those responsibilities are coordinated through this bill. We are specifically focused on the RISE zone. The RISE zone is something that UMB was among the first to get a RISE zone. We struggled to have an impact of it. It was very helpful in opening a $100 million building that we just opened a couple of months ago. But as we were working through the RISE zone, we were only able to do 1 acre of land. And it was helpful in getting the building up, but it was not helpful in supporting the companies that locate there and thrive and grow companies. So we are excited with the changes, significant changes in the RISE zone legislation through this bill. And we think that will both make that first building successful, but also enable us to have a much greater economic impact on the area surrounding UMB. And of course, that goes for each of the universities throughout the state. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, good afternoon. My name is Troy Lamel Stovall. I serve as the CEO for TEDCO. As many of you know, TEDCO is the early stage technology and life science venture capital and venture support organization for the state of Maryland. We are a very small part of the Decades Act that we fully support all 100+ pages of it. TEDCO is a very small part, but it's a very important part. As you know, our goal is to make investments on behalf of the state of Maryland and realize a return on those. Our the way we're set up is if a company grows what they're supposed to do, if they grow and no longer a Maryland qualified company, at that very moment, TEDCO has to immediately liquidate its investment in that company. And that does a number of things. Number one, we have an example, for instance, of a company where because of that immediate liquidation, we lost at least $6 million in cash flow back to the organization that we could not reinvest back into Maryland companies. But that company itself had to give us back at least almost $500,000 in cash that it used, that as opposed to growing the company, it had to give us back as part of that. And so this bill would allow our investment committee to look at those types of investments and look to see if there's still an economic development opportunity that still exists, and up to 5 years be able to hold those investments and still bring economic viability back to TEDCO and to the state. So again, we're in supportive of the entire bill, and obviously here for that part of TEDCO, and here to answer any questions. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, members of the committee, my name is John Porcari. I've had the great honor and privilege of twice serving as Transportation Secretary in Maryland, as President Obama's Deputy Secretary of Transportation, and most recently as the White House Port and Supply Chain Envoy during the pandemic. One thing that I've learned is that the transportation and economic development are two sides of the same coin and are inextricably linked. I'm here in support of the Decade Act, and in particular, its a pillar on aerospace and defense industry. That's an industry that Maryland has a storied history in. It's one where the emerging technologies from advanced aerial mobility, for example, provide great opportunities in every corner of the state, whether it's the development of electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft, revitalized regional aviation, advances in aeromedical or defense-related. Maryland is uniquely positioned to actually capitalize on these emerging technologies, and the Decade Act recognizes that through the programs, the policies, and the pillar of support. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, but I will say that I think Maryland's aerospace and defense future is brighter than ever in light of the Decade Act and the opportunities that are out there. Thank you.
All right, good afternoon. For the record, my name is Tasha Cornish, and I am the Executive Director of the Cybersecurity Association, a nonprofit dedicated to strengthening Maryland's cybersecurity industry. Our association represents over 600 businesses ranging from small enterprises to large corporations and representing 100,000 Marylanders. We appreciate the opportunity to offer testimony today. This bill provides much-needed strategy to our asset-rich state. We enthusiastically support the enhancements specifically to the R&D tax credit and the ITC. My testimony today will reflect specifically on the importance of modernizing the Buy Maryland Cyber Tax Credit. I'm going to highlight, I have submitted written testimony, but I'm going to highlight a few of the biggest points I think here. So one is to expand eligibility. We know that cybersecurity is not an optional investment for companies of any size, and organizations are increasingly required to conduct third-party assessments to maintain contracts and grow their business. This tax credit is a force multiplier for companies seeking cyber solutions and Maryland's cyber cybersecurity companies. Secondly, by making this tax credit refundable, essential health and human services are frequently delivered by nonprofit entities with limited administrative resources. A refundable tax credit would facilitate investments in cybersecurity services so that essential services are delivered. In our stakeholder conversations, this was particularly exciting for the Maryland Hospital Association and Maryland nonprofits. Finally, eliminating the service cap. The foundations of cybersecurity are people, processes, and technologies in that order. Eliminating the service cap of 25% will align the tax credit with cyber hygiene best practices of people and process investments. In 2021, I was invited to Capitol Hill to the U.S. House of Representatives to speak on the Buy Maryland Cyber Tax Credit specifically. It's a national example of how we can provide these force multiplier tax credits to really grow the industry and grow our country's cyber resilience. I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair. I'm Tom Sadowski, for the record, the Executive Director of the Maryland Economic Development Corporation, MEDCO for short. And we're pleased to be here and testify on behalf of the Decade Act, a very forward-thinking and innovative piece of legislation that we're proud to be included within. MEDCO was created by this body, frankly, the legislature 40 years ago, to help support the state's critical and strategic economic development needs. Since then, we've issued more than $8 billion worth of revenue bond financing for projects. We've built more than 12,000 student housing beds throughout the state at various institutions of higher learning. We financed and constructed new health laboratories, energy facilities, SCIF, and critical infrastructure in support of our military and federal laboratories throughout the state. Energy plants, rail spurs, parking garages, you name it, the list goes on. But we've done this in support of economic development needs throughout the state, focusing on infrastructure and providing low-cost, high-efficient real estate development and financing solutions. Last year was our best year ever. We did $1.2 billion in projects, and we helped fund minority enterprise to the tune of $60 million in completion of a lot of our projects. We're proud to be a part of this legislation. We think we can continue our track record of delivering on infrastructure improvements, improving innovation infrastructure to help advance innovation-led economic development initiative, and really focus on placemaking, building innovation districts around our institutions of higher learning, military bases, and federal labs to help support critical economic development objectives that are outlined in this bill. Thank you very much for your consideration, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. But I really applaud the governor and his team for really being forward-thinking and developing the recommendations included as part of this legislation. So thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
No.
Thank you all very much.
All right.
I think we have a number of other witnesses here who could come up. I think we'd fit in the 5 chairs. So if you're planning for oral testimony, why don't you come up and sit in one of the chairs and see if there's enough room for this bill. Everyone ashore is coming ashore? Okay, please.
Hi, delighted to be here today. For the record, my name is Deborah Hemingway, and I'm the founder and managing partner of EC4 Capital, an early-stage medtech venture capital firm in Baltimore. Starting a business is hard. It's expensive, time-consuming, and full of uncertainty. But in Maryland, I have seen the unique opportunity firsthand we have, particularly in the medical sector. As over the past 2 years, my firm, EC4 Capital, has raised over $15 million from investors and put that money back to work in our most promising medical startup companies. A key factor in our success for raising capital has been leveraging the Biotechnology Investment Incentive Tax Credit Program. This program has been designed to attract investment into Maryland's life science ecosystem, and we've seen it be successful firsthand. However, there is a problem, and it is that the BITC program doesn't operate as smoothly as it should. When investors encounter administrative hurdles and delays, they become frustrated, hesitant, and ultimately less willing to invest. And when investors pull back, The companies struggle to raise funds. They struggle to get the capital they need to grow and to innovate and to ultimately create jobs and prosper right here in Maryland. So this bill fixes that problem by allowing pass-through entities, like my firm, EC4 Capital, to claim and allocate these tax credits at the entity level. This very simple fix, this refinement, makes the program more effective, more efficient, and ensures that the investment dollars flow seamlessly into Maryland's most promising medical companies across the state. So by supporting this bill, you're not just improving the BITC program, you're strengthening Maryland's position as a leader in medical innovation and commercialization. Thank you for your support, and I'm delighted to take any questions.
It's a hard act to follow. Thank you for having me today. I am Heather Tonelli, Director of Economic and Tourism Development for Queen Anne's County on the Eastern Shore, and I am here in support of the proposed Decade Act with a few amendments. As our governor, I'm sure, stated today, and many times, he states that we are asset-rich and strategy poor. When you look at where Maryland ranks and compared to our neighbors, you can certainly see that we need some work on our economic development approach. So this bill is aimed to do that. Some of the things that we see that we would like to propose amendments for is the broadening of the industry targets. If you look at Queen Anne's County and many of my rural peers, the industries that are focused on don't necessarily align with our counties. Agriculture, tourism, manufacturing, wholesale are just some of those industries that you'll see in our rural communities, and they're very important job growth drivers. If you look at economic development from an asset approach strategy, many of the assets that we have in our rural communities don't necessarily match with the target industries. We fully support those target industries, but not sure what economic impact that those will have and what opportunities will be provided in our smaller rural counties. One of the incentives that is looking to be cut within the Decade Act is the Job Creation Tax Credit. And that's been a super important tool for those of us, especially in smaller communities where our economic development toolbox may have 4 or 5 incentives that we're able to utilize versus our larger counties, which may have hundreds of opportunities. The Job Creation Tax Credit can provide, 10 additional jobs, 60 additional jobs, depending on where you live. But for a rural community, those jobs are significant, and the return on investment is significant. When we look at many of the other incentives that are looking to be revamped, we fully support that opportunity, and just hope that the rural communities are not left out of this economic development strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Kevin Canale here on behalf of the Maryland Association of Counties in support of the bill with amendments. You do have my written testimony. I'll first say there are a lot of great things in this bill, and I'll echo a lot of what Ms. Tonelli said. MACO is looking to just make sure that we preserve some local economic development flexibility. We're looking to protect some of these job-creating incentives that are cut in the bill, particularly the enterprise zone credit, the One Maryland credit. I know that DLS puts out a report that says that it's not worth the money, and then they don't bring what the state needs them to bring. It's not a good investment. But in Garrett County, when one of those programs creates 20 jobs, that's a big deal. 20 jobs is not a big deal in Annapolis, but out there, believe me, it moves the needle. We'd also like to make sure that workforce development strategies align with what is needed on the ground. And we think that a nice way to do that would be to take a regional approach. And we know that quantum and IT and some of these big industries that are a focus of the bill, that may work really well in large counties in the middle of the state. But in Western Maryland on the Eastern Shore, like Ms. Tonelli said, the jobs are different, the needs are different. So we'd like the state to try and take a regional approach, a holistic approach to make sure that our rural counties, some of our poorer counties aren't left behind. And then again, just to make sure that we're working with our local economic development directors on the ground. They should be a part of this. They need to be at the table for a lot of these decisions at the MEDAF and other programs. So that happens right now. We want to make sure that continues to happen. I think that is the intent of the bill, but we're just looking to make sure that we have some belt and suspenders to make sure that our folks are at the table when these decisions are made. So I'm happy to answer any questions, happy to work with the committee and the administration, but we'd ask for a favorable with amendments on the bill. Thank you.
Questions for members of the panel? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I think we've had everyone who's in the room who wanted to testify in person, right? And we have one virtual witness now. Great. Rhonda Carrington, are you there? Ms. Carrington? We miss you.
I can't do anything about our video.
And you're muted right now. We can't see you, which is a disappointment, but we can't hear you either, which is another disappointment. I think you got the rest of the day off, Ms. Carrington, but thank you for participating, and we'll look at your testimony. Thank you very much. That concludes the hearing.
Yep.
On this bill, and now we have Senator Corman. A minute to see if Senator Corderman can join us. In other words, we'll just start with you all and then have Senator Corderman come on when he comes up to be cognizant of people's time. This is the 1 minute warning.
Go ahead. Yeah, whenever.
There he is.
There he is.
All right, perfect timing. Senator, your show is on.
All right, you guys are all waiting in suspense. Oh, it's very exciting. All right, thank you, colleagues, Vice Chair Rosapep, fellow members of the committee. For the record, Senator Paul Corderman, District 2, representing Washington and Frederick County. Thank you for the opportunity to present Senate Bill 980, Natural Resources Maryland Heritage Areas Authority, Funding and Grants. Senate 980 would basically improve the effectiveness of our Maryland heritage areas across our state. Specifically, the bill as drafted allows, and again, it is permissive, it does not mandate, but allows the current cap to be lifted and reset from the current $6 million to $12 million. Again, this is only authorizing language that allows additional funding. It does not require that funding. We do have a small technical cleanup amendment to clean up some language in respects to the amount that can be utilized for operating. As the way the bill is currently drafted, that will leave the potential for less operating monies than currently is being authorized. So we will submit that to the committee for their consideration. Mr. Chairman and committee members, you'll find extensive support for this bill all around the state, from Hartford County's Vulcan Quarry Trail to Southern Maryland's Grandma's Hands Film, even Washington County's Historic Maryland Theater. Not just these projects, there's also support from Frederick, from Baltimore, Montgomery, Southern Maryland, and many other areas that are provided. I know our chair has stepped out right now, but I believe we have someone from Howard County to come in and speak today as well. And I might add, when this cap was last revisited, it was then Chair Casemeyer who sponsored the bill with one initial co-sponsor, the current chair of our committee. So thank you for consideration of this bill, and we request a favorable report on Senate Bill 980.
Good afternoon, and thank you for this opportunity. I'm Elizabeth Chateau, Director of the Heart of the Civil War Heritage Area, serving Carroll, Frederick, and Washington counties. The time is right to establish the possibility of a greater share of program open space funds to support the important investment made by the Maryland Heritage Areas Authority in our revenue-producing place-based assets. Together, Maryland's 13 heritage areas bring about economic benefit to the tune of $2.4 billion in economic contribution, 40,000 jobs supported and sustained, and $320 million in local and state tax revenues generated annually. Potentially, Senate Bill 980 will double those impact numbers. MHAA grants support heritage tourism-focused projects, but current law caps the budget at $6 million, 5.1 of which goes to our partners for grants. Each year, well-scoring worthy projects go unfunded. On average, there's an $8 million funding gap, and sometimes it's much more. Senate Bill 980 does not carry a spending mandate, but it would allow for MHAA appropriations of up to $12 million. Passing the law now means that when it makes fiscal sense for the state to take more advantage of the power of Maryland heritage areas to generate more tourism spending, create and sustain more jobs, and increase local and state tax bases, we will be poised and ready. This is forward-thinking and hopeful at a time when it is most needed, and thank you for your consideration.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dan Spedden. I'm the president and CEO of the Hagerstown, Washington County Convention and Visitors Bureau, a 501c6 corporation with a mission to improve the economy of Hagerstown and Washington County through the promotion of travel and tourism. Our tourism office partners with and relies heavily upon the work of the Heart of the Civil War Heritage Area. Our heritage area also serves Frederick and Carroll counties. While my tourism office focuses on attracting visitors to a variety of events, attractions, and destinations, our heritage area, in addition to its preservation work, actively markets and promotes to attract the cultural and heritage tourist. Travelers to our cultural and historic sites are well-educated, high-wage earners who stay longer and spend more money than the average visitor. My tourism office invests annually in the operation of the heritage area, providing cash to sustain operations and programs. We also provide valuable matching dollars to make our heritage area eligible for grants. Funding for heritage areas is capped, and time and inflation tend to erode its impact. Lifting the cap on heritage area fundings creates an opportunity for the program to grow in the future, to stay relevant, to remain a leader in the preservation of Maryland's cultural and historic resources, and to remain a solid partner in helping me grow my community's tourism economy. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon to the committee. Thank you so much for having us here today. My name is Laura Anderson Wright. By day, I'm a 30-year state employee for this wonderful state, but I'm also chair of the board of directors of Heritage Montgomery, the heritage community that supports a core part of the state. I've also been a board member for the Montgomery County Arts and Humanities Council, Montgomery History, the Sandy Springs Slave Museum, proud District 14, and the historic Oddfellows Lodge. I am committed to growth in this state. I have lived and volunteered in 14 and lived in 18, 21, 17, and now 16. So I am deeply invested in the state and its heritage. I'm dedicated to the mission of preserving and promoting local history, culture, and its distinctive natural areas while fostering stewardship and economic development, not just for Montgomery County, Maryland, but for the entire state. And when you support heritage and culture within the state, you support us, but the benefits are tenfold. So I'm here to ask for your support of 980, cross-filed as HB 1327. But the good news is here. I'm not asking you for money, but what I want to give you is growth. With the passage of this bill, I can give you even better news. You'll continue to get a hefty return on your investment. In District 39 alone, for example, we have funded Prathertown, Seneca Creek State Park, Pleasant View. And so the ask here today is to simply lift the cap on the Maryland Heritage Areas Authority funding to allow for the potential for more funding through Project Open Space. As my wonderful colleague on the panel said, we want to be primed and ready for growth. Passage of this bill will allow up to $12 million to be appropriated to the MHAA. And as chair, I'm incredibly proud of my heritage area's contributions to the entire state's program. $2.4 billion in economic contribution, 40,000 jobs supported and sustained. I implore you to give this bill a favorable report. Thank you.
Yes, hi. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Lucille Walker. I am the Executive Director of the Southern Maryland National Heritage Area. We are both a state and national heritage area. As you've heard, there are 13 heritage areas in the state of Maryland that touch on every county, and Baltimore City. And Maryland is quite unique. Maryland is only one of 2 states in the entire nation that has a state-based heritage program. That shows that Maryland values not only heritage, but the economics of heritage tourism. And yes, we are also funded through the transfer tax with Program Open Space, another very valuable program in our state. To show you the support that we have, we literally have Maryland in the house today. We have heritage area supporters from the north, the west, the south, the east, everywhere in between. They have traveled long distances today. You have a lot of their written testimony and more written testimony, but we also are very cognizant of your time, so we're limiting our panel and not having them testify, but I would like to ask them to stand. They came hours to be here today. Please stand. I urge a favorable report. This is an investment in Maryland's future. Thank you so much.
Members of the panel or for Senator Corderman? Going once, going twice?
We have one soon.
We have another witness, but there are no questions, right? Okay, so thank you all very, very much.
Thank you so much.
And we have one more witness online. Right in front of us. Can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
Excellent. Please proceed.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to provide oral testimony in support of this bill. My name is Laura Houston. I am here on behalf of Preservation Maryland, Maryland's statewide nonprofit dedicated to harnessing the power of and advocating for the state's exceptional historic places for the benefit of its communities. As Director of Preservation Maryland's Historic Property Redevelopment Program, which focuses on breathing new life into historic structures through restoration and adaptive reuse, I've had the honor of experiencing firsthand the substantial impact that a grant from MHAA can have. These grants have been critical to the success of our projects, such as the adaptive reuse of the historic Ellicott City Jail in the Patapsco Valley Heritage Area, and the stabilization and elevation of the last City Dock Waterman's Cottage in the Chesapeake Crossroads Heritage Area. MHAA dollars close the gap on project costs and allow us to more fully address building and community needs. But more than that, projects like the ones funded by MHAA play an important role in stimulating the economy. They provide income for local businesses and firms who are contracted to do the work. They reactivate underutilized spaces, generate interests in respective localities, and create destinations that draw heritage tourists who are proven to stick around longer and spend more, as was previously noted. But the industry is only seeing costs for such crucial projects increase, reducing the breadth of MHAA's impact on the places that matter to Marylanders if the scale of funds the program can award does not also increase. I urge a favorable consideration of this bill so that the history and character that make this state one of a kind can remain and be shared with those who aren't as lucky as we are to call this state home. Lastly, I would be remiss if I did not use a few seconds of my 2 minutes to commend the staff at MHAA who do an exemplary job providing technical assistance and information to constituents like myself. You're sincerely appreciated. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, and committee members.
Very, very much. You did it again, right on the money. Are there any questions for Ms. Houston? Thank you very much. That concludes the hearing on Senate Bill 980. And it also concludes a committee hearing for today. We're going to take a 5-minute break and go into capital budget hearings.
Bringing out the big guns over here.
Man, we have representation. Got you covered, brother.
How's it going?